The film revolves around a smart and introverted girl named Ellie Chu, who lives in the remote town of Squamish with her widower father. She lives by the train tracks as her father works as a train master and a signalman. However, the budget is always tight, so Ellie spends her days making extra money by writing homework papers for her fellow students at high school. She also often gets picked on by the popular kids when riding her bike to and from school. One day, her English teacher finds out that she has been writing for the other classmates, but instead of scolding Ellie, the teacher thanks her for helping the class achieve good grades. That does make the teacher look good. She then encourages Ellie to apply to the prestigious Grinnell College, as she recognizes her potential. However, despite being unhappy in Squamish, Ellie plans to stay because she does not want to leave her father all alone. Later, during music class, we are introduced to one Astor Flores, who is dating the popular and wealthiest kid in town, Trig Carson. Here, it is clear that Ellie has some sort of attraction towards Astor, but she puts it off and focuses on playing the piano. On the way back from school, she is approached by a football player named Paul Munsky from her school. Paul is an inarticulate and weird individual who mysteriously exists. But no one knows much about him. He wants Ellie to help him write a love letter to his crush, Astor. In return, he is ready to pay double her normal charges. However, Ellie declines, saying that these types of letters should be written by oneself. Deep down, she doesn't want anyone to propose to Astor.
She's mine, Munsky, you bitch.
But the next day, after learning that her home's electricity supply will be cut off if they don't make a minimum payment of $50, Ellie agrees to write the love letter. In the day, the two sit down together and she reads his sample. She finds it to be very awkward, as Paul goes off topic too many times. Ellie addresses these problems with him, but Paul retaliates, stating that she wouldn't know, as she has never been in love. This pisses Ellie off, and she storms away, but not before promising to write the best love letter Paul has ever seen. Romeo, where art thou?
I'm in Squamish.
The same evening at home, Ellie and her father watch a movie together. Simultaneously, she is trying to write the love letter, but doesn't get any ideas. When nothing comes to mind, she uses a line from the movie they are watching. The following day, Paul gets the letter, and without giving it a good read, he places it inside Astor's locker. She does reply a few days later, but not in the way Paul had hoped. Astor taunts him for plagiarizing from a movie, revealing that she too is an avid reader and movie watcher. In response, Ellie writes that she often uses other people's quotes to describe how she feels about the world. If she understood what love was, she would quote herself. Astor resonates with her, saying that life can be very hard sometimes. In this way, the two begin a heartfelt correspondence through letters. The only catch being that Astor believes she is communicating with Paul. She often feels alone and left out because Trig and her friends think she is boring. However, after unknowingly conversing with Ellie through letters and texts, she begins to feel understood and accepted. One day, Paul and Astor are set on a date, while Ellie listens in on their conversation. As expected, their date is a disaster, as Paul is unable to communicate with her like in the text messages and letters. The next day, Ellie meets him and expresses that they should stop trying now. She believes that the more they lie and deceive Astor, the more difficult it will become to convince her. However, when Paul defends Ellie from some bullies on the way back home, she changes her mind and decides to help him again. This time, she intends to use a different approach. Over the course of the next few weeks, Ellie teaches Paul about art, literature, and other things that interest Astor. During this time, the two get to bond and know a lot about each other. They also open up about their family struggles. It turns out that Paul's family has been in the sausage industry for as long as he can remember, and they want him to continue with the business.
Mom, Dad, is sausage industry a euphemism?
However, he finds it very boring and wants to try something different. Currently, he is working on a new dish called taco sausage, which he thinks will be a revolutionary food item. He has even mailed various food critics about his idea, but so far, none of them have responded. As for Ellie, her parents emigrated from China a long time ago. Her mother died when she was young, while her father, who has a PhD in engineering, isn't able to find the appropriate job because of his accent. Now he is forced to work as a train station master and signalman. Could be worse. A lot of guys would give their left nut to be called train master. As the two narrate their stories, they gradually become connected to one another. They even spy on Astor to get a good grip on the things she likes doing. Luckily, the hard work pays off, and Paul is eventually invited for a second date. However, when the big moment arrives, he is nervous and still has trouble conversing with Astor. Meanwhile, Ellie observes their date from outside a window. Seeing the plan go sideways, she messages Astor, pretending to be Paul and saves the evening. Paul doesn't have a clue what's going on, so he simply acts as if he is texting under the table. After a while, when Aster appears charmed, he suddenly expresses his feelings for her. The two then finally start talking, while Ellie sees them and gets upset, eventually leaving the place on her bike. The next day, Ellie is chosen to play the piano in the high school recital, so she shops for some clothes for the event, and Paul accompanies her. He tells her about his date with Aster last night, revealing that he kissed her, but this only upsets Ellie. She begins contemplating her decision to assist him. On the day of the program, during a rock and roll performance, Ellie's bullies secretly meddle with the piano. Shortly after, she steps onto the stage and proceeds to play, but to her horror, some of the keys in the piano are broken. Ellie tries to improvise and come up with a song, but it sounds so bad that the audience starts making fun of her. Meanwhile, Paul, who is watching everything unfold from backstage, finds out that it was the bullies who broke the piano. So he quickly passes her a guitar and tells her to play a song. This is because Ellie once mentioned that her favorite instrument is the guitar, not the piano. Hesitantly, she starts playing, and after a while, she gets into the groove. Ellie even sings a beautiful song that she had written herself. After her performance, the audience showers her with a loud applause, making her relieved. The same evening, Paul takes Ellie to the senior recital party, where she is greeted by everyone, and they all treat her like a friend. Unable to contain her happiness, Ellie gets heavily intoxicated and almost passes out, so Paul takes her to his home. After he lays her down to sleep, Paul goes through her bag and finds several letters. They have been addressed to popular food critics, presumably about his sausage creations. This makes Paul very happy, and he starts liking her even more. Unfortunately, the next morning, Aster arrives there and finds Ellie in Paul's bedroom. The two have an awkward conversation, where Ellie explains that she was simply passing by to drop some books off. She also reveals that Paul is head over heels in love with Aster, which finally relieves the latter. As the two girls continue talking, they bond over their shared interest in art and literature, so they decide to spend the day together. Anyone else feel like this is headed for a threesome? At first, Ellie takes Aster near the train tracks and demonstrates her father's job as a signalman. Don't be humble, Ellie. He's a train master, damn it. Then, they hop into Aster's car and reach a hidden hot spring in a secluded forest. Once there, Aster undresses and jumps into the spring, while Ellie is ashamed to look at her. But after a bit of convincing, she also joins in and enters the water with her shirt on. The two share an intimate conversation, where Aster opens up about her conflicting feelings for Paul. She also reveals that she heard her boyfriend Trig talking to her father about marrying her. In the evening, after Aster drops Ellie off at her home, she meets Paul while he is taking out the trash. It turns out that he has started bonding with Ellie's dad and regularly helps with the housework. Aster asks him if he believes in God, to which he says yes. Suddenly, she pulls Paul in for a kiss, but after it is done, neither of them seem that thrilled. Ellie witnesses this from her bedroom window and becomes upset. However, this gives her renewed motivation to do something in life, so she dusts off the old Grinnell college application that she had put away. The next day, Paul has his football game, so both Ellie and Aster show up to support him. However, despite his kiss with Aster the previous night, he is more excited to see Ellie. He even wins the game for his mediocre team by delivering a brilliant performance. After the game, Paul approaches Ellie, and it is revealed that he has developed feelings for her. So he takes his chance and leans in for a kiss, but she brutally rejects him. To make matters worse, Aster walks in on them. Ellie tries to explain the situation, but she doesn't hear any of it and storms out angrily. Seeing the look in her eyes, Paul realizes that Ellie is in fact in love with Aster. He tries to warn her that it is a sin and that she will go to hell for it, but Ellie, being an atheist, could care less. From then onwards, everybody is in a state of sadness. Ellie is filled with guilt for manipulating Aster with her letters. Aster is stuck with the self-centered Trig, and Paul is left to ponder on what to do with his life. I don't know, Paul, do something with sausages. Later in the week, Paul delivers sausages. Oh my god. Later in the week, Paul delivers sausages to Ellie's home, where he meets her father. The two have a heart-to-heart conversation about love. Paul then comes to terms with accepting who Ellie is, and to love her in a different way. One day, everyone is gathered at a church. Paul is with his family. Trig and Aster are together, while Ellie is on the piano to play some hymns. Shortly after, Trig gives a short and self-absorbed speech about how nice his girlfriend Aster is. After the speech, he shockingly proposes to Aster in front of everyone, and she hesitantly says yes. Ellie immediately jumps to her feet, and before she can confess her love, the priest abruptly cuts her off. A few seconds later, the priest is also cut off, as Paul stands and gives a speech about love. He mentions that pretending is not a part of love, and that no one should fake it. Seeing Paul's courage, Ellie also shares the true meaning of love, using her words from a previous letter she had written to Aster. This makes Aster realize that she has been communicating with Ellie through the letters and texts all along. Enraged, she vehemently slaps Paul for lying to her before storming out of the church. The movie then cuts to several weeks later, where Ellie is in the kitchen with her father. They are cooking some dumplings, as Ellie is soon leaving for Iowa. She has finally been accepted into Grinnell College. However, she doesn't want to leave things unresolved with Aster. It turns out that Aster's been keeping a low profile ever since the church incident. Despite this, Ellie manages to track her down to a restaurant where she works. She then apologizes for writing the letters pretending to be Paul. Aster responds by saying that deep down, she did probably know the truth about it and considered the possibility of Ellie being a lesbian. With this, the two reconcile and playfully tease each other. Before leaving, Ellie even kisses Aster and tells her that she will see her in a couple of years. Later, Ellie prepares to leave Squamish. Before she boards the train, Paul sees her off at the platform. He tells her that his sausage recipes have received good reviews from a lot of people, and it's only a matter of time before he gets a large contract. Move over, Warren Buffett. Here comes Wiener Buffet. He also promises to keep visiting her father and keep him company. Finally, Ellie boards the train, and as it pulls away, Paul runs beside it, mimicking the old romance movie that they had watched together. She calls him an idiot and laughs at his silliness. But as the train gains speed and leaves Paul behind, Ellie turns around as tears run down her face. The movie ends as Ellie observes the passengers around her as she goes off to start a new journey in her life.
Move over, Bezos. Here comes Chorizos.